Hello, and welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today, Sarice Holley is joining me from Israel. Sarice, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sarice, you are a registered dietitian, and I'm gonna let you tell the good folks sort of what your experience is, and then we'll get into today's topic.
Sure. So, like you said, I'm a registered dietitian. I'm licensed by the Ministry of Health in Israel. I heard you mention this in another episode. There is like a difference here too between a nutritionist and a dietitian. So, but yeah, I don't get into all the politics, but I'm an RDN. My experience includes, well, one thing I can say is that when I was in my internship, I kind of realized that I didn't want to be the classical dietitian. Like I said, okay, I know I'm not going to work in a clinic and see patients back to back to back. So then I kind of had to see what career I was going to have. And then I was very lucky to have a very interesting career where I was able to find positions for dietitians and different fields, like public health. For example, I worked as a dietitian, and for the school lunch program, we basically came and I would inspect the school lunches here and make sure that they abided by the standards of the Ministry of Health, especially because from 2016, 2017, we went through like a very big transition where we were trying to introduce more whole grains and whole foods in general into the school lunches. And that came with some pushback that I'm sure we'll get into later. I was also a part of 3 clinical trials as a dietitian, and I've also worked with a national program to prevent prediabetes. There I worked with adults. We basically wanted to see that we could prevent diabetes from developing in people with prediabetes with no medical intervention, so only lifestyle. So it was just me and a personal trainer. So that
This
sums
is
up my career so
and
far.
that is actually shockingly cutting edge research. Which seems ridiculous. But there are other people who do that, who talk about that kind of stuff. I'm actually fascinated in the whole sort of food as medicine, lifestyle as medicine
Right.
space. That's not the focus of this podcast, so go listen to your other stuff. And if you want recommendations, you can ping me. Um, but I want to talk about your experience with the school lunch program. Can you kind of lay out a before, during, and after? And I know in the during part you met with some resistance, but sketch it out for us. Like what were they changing from to?
Okay, so the traditional luncheon in Israel, at least, it's really, kind of the typical carb would be pasta or white rice, and then the typical protein was the schnitzel that's like processed, and or chicken sometimes, and then there would be some vegetable that wasn't always a fibrous vegetable like by our standards. I would come to schools and there would be like rice, a potato was the vegetable, or rice and corn was the vegetable. And they would say, oh, these are the vegetables that the kids eat. So that was the before picture, and there was this huge reform that we went through where we were gradually going to change this because we knew we would get some pushback. I didn't imagine that it would be as drastic as it was, even from parents, because there's also the thing like on Fridays, which is a short day here, they would get like a fun meal, and then it would basically be slices of white bread with Nutella, hazelnut chocolate spread. And when we took that out, you would think that we like, cut the kids. We were torturing them. The kids, they were like, but it's for the kids. And I really respect the rationale of the Ministry of Health because they were saying that some of these kids, this is the healthiest meal that they'll get. Like we can't control what they're eating at home. This is probably the only meal where they're eating like a, protein. They're getting a balanced meal. So we said at least when they're under our our roof, at least give them a proper meal because we don't know what's happening at everyone's home. So
And this is a struggle between, kind of private and public. This is a struggle all over the world in westernized countries anyway, where yeah, food is being provided by the school system. In the U.S., I'm sure like ketchup, I think is still a vegetable. Um,
yeah, the US is when they complain about the standards here, and then I went to high school in the US. I was there from 10th to 12th grade, and I was like, oh, we're actually not doing that bad over here. But
yeah, yeah, but this
pizza,
is
nachos.
Yeah, but it's problematic, right? Because food is culture, food is love, food is care, food is treats. It's kind of um, how we treat ourselves and others.
Right.
And we have this really misguided narrative, I think, about, for example, the Nutella. Like, have you ever read the back of a Nutella
Yes.
bottle?
Have
And
you
again,
seen like the diagram that shows you the proportion of like palm oil and sugar and then the hazelnut and cocoa powder? Like I showed this to parents before and they're like, yeah.
yeah. And so, like, we conflate that, right, that huge label with lots of ingredients and lots of palm oil with love. If we're doing that, then we know we're in trouble, because when we take it away, it feels like a lack of love.
Wow, that's something that you hit it right on because that's probably one of the main things that I get from parents. Like now I work mostly with adults, but they'll always, at their moms, so they'll ask me about their children and then they'll tell me, but they'll have a snack drawer and they'll tell me, how does your son eat vegetables? How can I get them to eat more vegetables? And like, do you have vegetables and fruits readily available? And like when I see them filling up these snack drawers, I see them in the supermarket all the time. And I'm like, well, you don't have your pantry looking like a vending machine. Like, have some. Then maybe that's like a first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, right, if we're in this processed food as love mindset, then it's really hard, because, and I want you to tell the story about this adult you were just telling me about, who was um, not able to eat vegetables because her parents didn't, in air quotes, force her to do so as a child.
Right.
Before you do that, I want to step in here just a second, because we have had conversations on this podcast about picky eating and about extremely picky eating. And if you want to learn more about that, go listen to the Jenny Friedman episode, Amy Burkholder episode. Those are people who are dealing with really problem eating, like clinically problematic, diagnosable feeding conditions, which is many of the kids who are listening here, but not most, probably. What we're talking about, Sarice, today is kind of the rest, the 80%,
Right.
within which, some of those folks are going to be kind of picky. Some of them just need a different approach,
Yeah. And a lot of times it's that.
where
And
if we
we can
change,
get back to the schools and we'll talk about that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So tell us about your adult client who came to you because she wanted to eat vegetables.
Right. So I had an adult client. She was a flight attendant and she was young. She was 21, fresh out the military here. And she said, like, she just realized that her diet is so limited and she started traveling the world more and she wanted to expand her palate because she just wanted to sit at dinner and kind of eat more similar to her peers. And it wasn't exactly in the first session, but she kind of expressed to me later on that she says she had some resentment towards her parents that they didn't make her eat her vegetables. But yes, her diet was very limited. It was like limited to like rice, pasta, bread, almost no vegetables at all. I'm trying to think, maybe I think she ate potatoes in a specific way, like boiled potatoes. And yeah, so she was very limited with her diet, and we kind of had to gradually, we did a challenge where every week we would kind of like choose one vegetable or fruit for her to try to eat, introduce into her diet that week. And over a course of months, she was able to find some fruits and vegetables that she enjoyed, and she felt a little bit more normal. But yeah, that's an example of a picky eater that grew up in as an adult.
Yeah.
And mm,
I want to ask you, I just really want to spell it out here. Why is it important to eat fruits and vegetables? Why is it bad when lunch is Nutella and white bread? Why is it bad when lunch is potato, corn, and schnitzel?
well, there are so many facets to this. First of all, fiber. I think sometimes parents are worried about like their kids not eating enough protein, and I laugh. Like the protein requirements for like toddlers and young children aren't that like 13 grams of protein that they can eat 2 eggs and but a lot of kids are lacking fiber, and fiber is important for digestion for a healthy microbiome. Also the texture, you need that like textures of like crunchiness, the different flavors that you don't get from processed foods like schnitzel and pasta that are pretty much very consistent with their flavors. And yeah, it'll just help them be more, also all the antioxidants and vitamins and minerals that you'll get from fruits and vegetables that you won't necessarily get from these plain, pretty much bland processed foods often.
There's, I was just listening to something that is basically saying many westernized countries have chronic constipation
Yeah.
as a direct result of not having enough fiber. And chronic constipation can lead to other illnesses, right, over
Yes.
time. That's how you get colorectal cancer. That's how
Correct.
you like, there's, so I want
And
to,
we're seeing this more in children.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, okay, interesting, right? So this is not like, I just want to be really clear because the minute you start talking about food, people they get very defensive. This is
Right.
not about judging people for their diet. It is about educating people about health and longevity and how healthy do you want to be into your adulthood, and the fact that kids don't decide what goes in their mouths.
Exactly that part. Right. And you don't want to cultivate emotional eaters because that's something that you also do when you treat your kids and you love your kids with food. And then they also end up to me, my clients, like they don't know how to, like, every time they're bored or they're a little bit anxious, they're reaching for snacks because that was their like coping system growing up. That's how their parents taught them to deal with stress or celebration or excitement, was food, food, food.
Let's go back to your school for just a second. So, because you dealt with this with the teachers saying kids are not going to eat this food.
Yeah, so when they got the new menus and they saw things like bulgur and whole grain pasta and things like that, or lentils, they told me like up front, oh, and fish and just different ways of cooking different, like, meat stews like goulash and things like that. They were just telling me automatically, no, the kids won't like that. It's too spicy. There's too much sauce. They won't like. They were just before the kids even try, they were telling me what the kids weren't going to do. So, and the way that, now, I'm not responsible for how the layout was. We were instructed how to do this, but I'm so grateful that I got this experience because now that I'm a mom, I was able to like relay this knowledge onto when he started feeding. But one of the things that we told them to do, but first we would come and we would observe. Before we would tell them anything, we would first come and observe how the lunch is handled. So, a lot of times, most of the time, they were serving the kids, and and that gives the kids, like, less control. So we would advise them, we would tell them, instead of serving them, put the food in the center of the table and let them serve themselves. And or like they would, so it would just work beautifully because we would put a bunch of fruits and vegetables in the middle of the table, and lentils and bulgur, and it was enough that one kid was familiar from home with like lentils. It just showed you like the effects of positive peer pressure. One kid would take it and then the other kid would like look at that kid and then he would try it too, and they were like, oh, okay, I like lentils. Not that this worked 100% of the time with all the kids, but the teachers were pleasantly surprised at how successful it was. And we also did some like combinations. Instead of switching to like all whole rice or brown rice or whole grain pasta, we would call it like 80-20. So it would be, first it was 20% whole grain and then white, and then we reversed it along the year so that was kind of, first they were noticing the color, and just that color change, it was like, they wouldn't want to touch the pasta or the rice. It just looked weird to them in the eye. But then eventually, over time, they got used to it, and it was enough for one child to try it and express, that they liked it, and then the other kids went in as well. So it was all like giving them a little bit of independence to serve themselves and positive peer pressure.
Yeah, and listen, we don't give kids enough credit, I think, to have independence at mealtime. My impression is that it's in service of keeping things clean, cleaner.
Yeah, that's another thing. They were like, well, you come and clean this afterwards. They're gonna make a mess.
But here's the thing. Food is a tactile, olfactory, taste-based experience. And if we're not getting all of that, then we're missing some things. This is true of, I was at a preschool this morning. The kids were filthy dirty by 10 o'clock in the morning because they were on the playground, in the sand, in the water, going down the slide. They were dirty. That's as it should be.
Right.
Kids should be getting dirty, and we have forgotten this, I think, by and large, particularly as surrounds food. the number of times that I see parents wiping their kids' mouths between bites.
Oh, my husband. When we were feeding, he was just like, so the mess. You know what? I was like, let me do this because he
Yeah.
was wiping him too much, and I was just like, no, let him. We'll clean him after he finishes eating. Yeah.
And it's hard. Listen, again, no judgment, no shade.
Right.
Once you know, oh, it's actually a value that they be up to their elbows in their food and that it be smeared, particularly for infants, that it be smeared all over their faces. Once you know that's correct, then you can change your behavior and your mindset. But
Right.
I think we've forgotten that that's the case. And again,
They
so
should experience
yeah,
experience the
it's an
meal.
experience. Okay, so the kids get the new food, you put it on the table, they serve themselves. Many of the kids, not all of the kids ever, but many of the kids embrace this new meal plan, yeah?
Right. And I won't say it was the first day. Like I remember we had this chart that we had to fill out the percentage of food that was left on the plate at the end of the meal. So it would like the first day was like, they maybe ate like the 20% and then it was 50. And then they would consider like if they ate over half, then they consumed enough food. So it took a few weeks, but they ended up, eating just as much as they did like in the previous year. So by the end of the year, it was considered a success. And so it continued to like nationwide.
It's amazing. I think there's a couple of takeaways for me from this is more independence, even if you think your child can't handle it,
Right.
in service of kind of this messy but controlled self-control around food. Offering quality rather than offering not quality. And combining those two things in general. And again, we're not talking about the outliers here. Okay, we're doing that on
Yeah.
purpose. For most people, that's what we need. The other thing I want to pull out from your story with your adult client is she was ready for a change. And
Right.
so for those outliers, often we have to be ready as clinicians, as people who work with families, we have to be ready to wait for the buy-in. And willing to wait for the buy-in. And it's not gonna, maybe it won't happen when they're 5 or 12 or 18. Maybe it's gonna happen when they're 21.
21. Right. Yes, because I'm sure her parents like tried to serve her and vegetables, and she just after saying no, no, no so many times, they just they gave up, and they probably didn't have the awareness, the knowledge to take her to a clinician. But
How has your education and your work experience impacted your feeding of your own children? Because you have littles at home.
yes, I have one little in the meantime, but yeah, it definitely impacted. I'll say like when I was during my studies, I felt like I enjoyed it, but everything was technical. And then when I actually faced humans, I realized, oh my gosh, like humans don't follow formulas and humans have emotions and objections and, myths that they believe about food. And that was just like a whole nother thing I had to educate myself about. But as far as the littles, I think I got the most experience from my mom patients that were asking me different questions about their children and that school lunch program that I worked with. So we went with the baby-led weaning route, and I think it was really like successful, giving him the independence. I had to tell my husband, trust me on this one, because when he saw me like not give, he is used to like parade foods and only soft foods, and he sees me giving him like steamed carrots and different things, and he's like, no, he's gonna choke on that. So, but he trusted me, and my son, food. He's a good either. Now he's a toddler, so of course he has those days where he feeds off of solar energy. But a lot of days, but a lot of days he'll make up for it, and he eats some days. But now he's in this, I'm thankful for my work experience that I was like prepared for it, and I know how to deal with it, and I know like to relax, not. And I have to explain to my husband as well, like don't force him, just leave him, just put it on the table, and he'll eat it if he wants. If you're like trying to force feed him, it's not going to work. It's just going to lead to more objection. And
I say
he
this to
sees that I'm right.
families. Yeah, I say this to families all the time. There are very few things that toddlers are in control of. One is what they put into their bodies. The other one is what they put out of their bodies in the form of either poop or speech. Right?
Right.
And we do not want to be in power battles with those three things, because we will lose every time, especially if we've got a nervous system, a kid with a nervous system that's a little bit jacked up, a little bit wired for no instead of yes, where you're going to shut down that nervous system in the power battle, and that's the end of the conversation. And so, to your point, keeping it light, keeping it optional. I have a feeding therapist on my former team who used to say, let's map out a toddler's meal plan by month. Let's look at the calories they're getting by month, not by day.
Yes, that's true. Right. If you look at the day to day, you're gonna just stress yourself out. But you'll realize I would tell my clients look at it and by week, but a month is also like I could see that working as well. So yeah, because if you stress yourself, oh no, today he didn't eat breakfast and lunch and he only ate. I'm like, but tomorrow he eat, and you'll notice that they'll increase their calories the next day, and maybe this day they won't eat much. But as long as they're steadily growing at a healthy rate, it's fine. And I'm just talking about like not the extreme picky eaters, just the average.
Yeah, and we should pause here for a second because I want to highlight this difference again. Because I know I was on Facebook reading, I go on the mommy blog sometimes, and there was a mom who was posting that she was worried about her child's food intake, and the pediatrician was saying, no, it's fine. And I strongly recommended that she see a dietitian for this reason. You want to know, are we dealing with problem picky eating or some behavioral kind of regular, more run-of-the-mill picky eating in which the strategies are going to work? Certainly, if you are employing baby-led weaning, if you're allowing for food control by your child and letting them fill themselves up and introducing all those healthy, options and whole foods, and your child is not gaining weight, is refusing to eat over time, then yeah, you want to get help with that immediately.
Right.
Don't wait.
And listen to your instincts, because sometimes, unfortunately, pediatricians can be quick to like brush it off as like, oh, this is just a phase. But I feel like parents know. They know, and go with your gut instinct. Get a second opinion, a third opinion if you have to.
Yeah. Sarice, if people want to learn more about you, because you also have a podcast.
Yes,
Do you want to tell us about that? Yeah.
It was a great episode. I got some great feedback about it. Yes, I have a podcast called Maternity Leave. I interview moms and mom business owners, and you can also follow me on Instagram. I can't say that I'll answer DMs often. I'm not on there as consistently as I should be, maybe, but yes. And I also have a website, SariceHolley.com, where I post mom and parenting things. So you're welcome to Sarice Holley on everything, all the social media platforms.
We will link to all of that in the show notes. Sarice, thanks for being here and sharing your experience.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was really fun.